now we have plenty of time for questions and conversation. First off, are there any questions for Ola? Because he will have to leave in a few minutes. Jonas, Mariana?
So far, no questions for Ola.
Okay. Questions? Other questions?
Yes. Other questions first for Daniel. A question which was how are SKF's investors involved in their steel procurement strategy? So do the investors kind of take part or speed up or demand something from you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess it connects to the earlier discussion or reflection we had on price and availability. But in general, our investors are not involved in selecting suppliers or making any procurement decisions, of course. But I would say they shape the environment or the context in which those type of decisions are made. So we have a good number of investors who are very focused on our long-term competitiveness and want to see us successful, not just in the next quarter, but over a longer period of time. And sustainability and our sustainability ambitions are seen as part of that future-proofing or making us competitive over the longer time horizon. And of course, then steel decarbonization is key to that part, and it shows in how we set our targets and our ambitions and the level of transparency we have. And then I think many people will have seen in the news, but and we have Ola here from Stegra, but our main shareholder is also now engaging in green steel through Stegra. So I think there is at least an interest in the green future or in the future of the green steel. So no directives or anything like that, but a general what should I say? The general indication that we should future-proof through becoming more sustainable.
Thank you, Daniel. And then there's a question, I think mostly for Ninni. This is from Daily from IIGCC. And the question goes like this. Did you happen to hear anything from corporates around the idea of prioritizing their so-called their own Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions rather than Scope 3 purchased goods and services? Any insight on how we can drive home the importance of this for steel purchasers?
Wrong button. Yes. Well, since we really don't focus on Scope 1 and 2 emissions in our indicators at all, of course, when we look at the company's reporting, those are always kind of the first ones to address. And it's of course natural. They are closest to the company. They have most control over them. But it is quite clear that the companies that kind of have realized that they need to do something about steel, since it is a central material for them, they are very serious about their Scope 3 emissions regarding steel. And there's only 4 companies on the whole scoreboard that actually report that disaggregate their emissions regarding steel. So that's kind of, I think, in my opinion, that's the first step. And also, of course, setting targets regarding steel, and not stopping at climate action, but also looking at other environmental impacts. And as Anna said, we are very much looking forward to, well, we have to, of course, take into consideration our analytical capacity, which has so far been me, but we might be able to get some help with that, so that we could then also include social aspects, human rights, workers' rights, indigenous rights, and so forth. And I'm looking forward to including those. But yeah, to summarize, all of these companies, we have chosen these companies specifically because they are, all of them, to various levels, but still they are all more or less ambitious, and they have the science-based targets, and they all look at their Scope 3 emissions and report them and so forth. So these are not companies that are taking their first steps with climate action. They are actually quite developed still, but there's a lot of work to do still.
Thank you, Ninni. And then we have one more question here from Schäuble from the European Environmental Bureau. What are the bottlenecks for you not receiving data on air pollution and water consumption? Is this absence a fit of purpose of databases on those parameters? And then there's a parenthesis that in the future, as of 2028, we should get all the inputs data reported via the European Industrial Emissions Portal.
That's a very good question. Well, I think Daniel might be, because he's working, or his colleagues, is Flavio or what's her name?
Stefania.
Yes, sorry.
Flavio and I are here at least. Yep.
They could maybe reply to this, because in the case of all of these companies have more or less, or most of them have assessed these questions, these issues as not material in their double materiality assessments. As I mentioned, I have my doubts that because if steel is a central material for you, then I would that would be my automatic conclusion, would be that these topics should be material. But of course, since companies make their own, they set their own thresholds, and there is a load of topics in the ESRS standard. So I understand why, partly, but still I will not quit asking for these disclosures. But I'll give the floor to Daniel to maybe address this question from a company's point of view that so far has not disclosed this information.
No, and I agree with what you already said. It's a complex picture as a whole, and as a company, in our materiality analysis, water and air pollution has not on their own been regarded as material. That being said, we still have some requirements on our suppliers related to these topics in our supplier sustainability standard. And I think to some extent it comes down to bandwidth and what we can do and what we can cope with, and so far focus has been on putting more general requirements on a lot of different sustainability topics, but then pursuing more detailed data and also requesting performance improvements at a different level when it comes to climate and CO2 in particular. So we agree it's key and important topics, but yeah, I think that's the reality of it.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. And I would like to add actually that there are two companies that require data from their suppliers on water usage. Scania and Electrolux, but neither of them then report further about the data that they get. And you told me in the call, Daniel, that you collect this data from your suppliers as well, at least partially, but since it's not a material topic, like through the double materiality assessment process, then it's not reported.
Yeah, that's correct.
Any other questions?
Could I add still something to the previous topic? I think it could be also a question of kind of a maturity on where the focus is, in the sense that many companies related to steel sector, and rightly enough, have started the more focused or strategic work on sustainability related to decarbonization, and that has been probably kind of now being the most elaborated part of in brackets environmental sustainability, and because that was also something that when I was discussing, for example, with Responsible Steel, that they've been getting the signals that regarding climate topics, then companies pretty well, for example, our customers, and know what to ask and how to ask from us and their other suppliers. But then regarding other topics, be it different environmental impacts or then the social sustainability topics related to human rights, for example, and then the kind of a supply chain resilience with that regard, then that is where there's much more work to be done. Not to say that everything is completed with climate topics either, but it might be that we are kind of there's kind of work in progress, and already referring to the certain principles of Responsible Steel, that compared to the previous standard, now we have more frameworks to deal with water issues and with biodiversity issues and nature capital and all these topics. So maybe we, and hopefully we will see then, and also pushed by CSRD way of looking at things, then kind of widening the spectrum of different topics to be covered.
Thanks, Anna, for your comment. Any other questions?
I am Flavio from SKF. I have a question or an observation to Anna. First of all, thank you for your presentation, very interesting about Responsible Steel. And you told that there are 90 sites Responsible Steel certified, and I was surprised. I did not think that they are so many. I was remaining to much lower number. I know how tough is having the Responsible Steel certification, because it's a wide ESG certification, so it's very, very complex, very, very extensive. So congratulations for your certification, first of all. And the question is, if I well understood, when you want to receive the certification by Responsible Steel, you need to certify site by site, not the company as a whole. You need the site certification. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's the work is done at the site level, and of course, like us, we have a lot of group-led policies, and but then the point is to kind of showcase how these things are lived up to in practice, because then, well, here in Helsinki headquarters, we are very good at manufacturing PowerPoints, but we do not manufacture any steel, and then the related impacts take place elsewhere as well. So that is really the concept, that even for us, when we cluster the sites based on our business lines, then the same work needs to be done site by site. And then there's also the product level certificate possible for carbon steel, but not for stainless yet. But of course, looking towards that as well.
And I think it's very time consuming and resource consuming, because it's an extensive certification. It's very, very well done, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's a bit the same as with the sustainability statement at CSRD reporting, that if you look at it as a certification exercise in that sense, or provide a drafting or putting together a sustainability report according to a very heavy framework, then that doesn't, it's pretty demotivating. But then if you have the kind of integrating these things into the existing management systems and leveraging the things you do and your sustainability ambition and how you kind of make progress, put that into work then, and how to leverage responsible steel with that, and also the sustainability statement and reporting processes, then I think that's the way forward. And luckily these things go pretty well nowadays, hand in hand, that you get the synergies and also are able to kind of see the bigger light of things where these things aim at.
I have just a last observation or comment. Probably Anna told before about the lack of a clear definition of green steel. I fully agree on this. We are thinking, struggling, evaluating which can be the right definition for green steel, less carbon intensive or green or whatever it is. Today, the most closer definition seems to be the one from Responsible Steel Progress Level 2, below Progress Level 2 at least. But for me, it's not yet the definitive one. The market, should still work. All of us should still work on to find a common definition of green steel, because it's very vague for the moment. Everyone is talking on green steel, but we don't know exactly what it is. That's my personal opinion.
To the point, Flavio. Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay. I think that if there's no more questions or comments, we could start to end this webinar here. But please, there's the link is in the chat for the full report, and take a look at it. And if you have any questions in the future, please send us our way. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who presented and everyone who has been listening eagerly for nearly 2 hours. So thanks, and see you all soon.